Welcome to this Maya tutorial. I'm Professor Phil Snyder at the University of Houston, and today we're going to begin a series of tutorials in modeling, rigging, animating, and setting the skin weights. We'll get into more of that later, in a flying bird. And so I like this tutorial because it gives you an introduction to some of the next level of complicated tools and operations in Maya. So let's get started. Go ahead and open up Maya, and I've got Maya 2019, but if you have anything from 2016 up to 2018 as previous versions, they should work just fine with this tutorial. The interface is pretty much the same. Now, as a matter of best practice, I like to create a project window right away. So you go to File, Project Window, and then you'll get this dialog box here. So rather than go to the default, I like to set it to a new place, a place of my choice, usually on my desktop, and then I can save it elsewhere later on. So let's call this Flying Bird, and we'll set the pathway to my desktop and select that and accept. And then if you look on your desktop or wherever you are setting it, then you'll see that it's there. And then automatically everything will be saved in the proper folder, and everything you import will go into the proper folder as well. And this is what it looks like. So let's begin modeling. First of all, we want to start like we do with most situations when we're doing modeling in polygons, is start off with a primitive shape. It could be a sphere or a cube or a cylinder. I like to start this particular tutorial with a sphere and then do our modeling and sculpting from there. So you can click on this sphere, create a sphere from the shelf, or you can go into Create and go down to Polygon Primitives and then click on Sphere. Either way is just fine, and then you see it automatically goes with the default number of polygons. So press the F key to bring it full, and we're going to start working on this. Let's rotate it around so that the Z is going from left to right. We're going to orient this so that the bird's length from head to toe, or beak to tail I should say, is going in the Z direction. So once you've got that there, we want to rotate it this way so that we're going to make this the beak, and then this will be the tail, and then we'll model from there. Now we can press the E key and we can rotate it that way. We can get it, we can eyeball it if we want and get it close, or we can go right over here into the channel box and type in 90 degrees, and that'll be rotating it in the X direction. Now you can see it just moved it a tiny bit because we were very close. And now let's scale it out in the Z direction. Press the R key and then we can just scale it out. Now you notice in the channel box that it says we're scaling it in the Y direction, and the reason for that is because the object was originally oriented towards up and down, or in the Y direction. So it's still maintaining that local orientation rather than the world orientation. So let's take it out probably about 4 times is good. And we can type that in if we want to get it exact. And while we're here, let's go ahead and save this. And while we're here, let's go ahead and save this at this first stage. Go to File, Save Scene As, and it navigates, see, automatically into our project window where we want to save it, and you can see that it's in the scenes folder. So all we want to do now is give it a name, and so let's call it flying underscore bird, and it'll save as a Maya binary file. So we'll save as, and then it'll automatically save into the scenes folder, and you can check that by going into your scenes folder, and there it is. It's really important that you have that project window set properly. So what we have now looks like either a fat cigar or some sort of basic blimp, but we're going to turn this into a bird. So hold down the Option key and the left mouse button and turn around this way, and we're going to start off with the wings. And the way we're going to do the wings is we're going to extrude in the faces select mode. So right click on the object, and let's go right down and select faces. On each side we're going to extrude out 4 polygons. So let's select those, shift select, and then we're on the same side, kind of a mirror selection, shift select all 8 of those together. Make sure that you're in the modeling menu, and then let's go to edit mesh and extrude. Now you'll notice that these controls here, we have move tools and we have scale tools, but we don't want to use the tool this way. What we want to do is use the scale tool so that we scale these out and the extrusions go straight out. So press R, and now you'll see it centered up between them, and so that it'll extrude straight out in both directions. So we'll go out 1 move, and then hold down the Option key, and let's rotate it around and see, get an idea of the thickness. So that's a little thick on both sides to start out with, so let's scale it down a little bit in that direction. Now we're going to extrude again, so let's go back up into Edit Mesh and click on the Extrude tool again. You can see our tool shows up here. Whichever tool is active shows up here. And so the same thing, we want to press R and then scale from the center and scale down a little bit thinner. So you can see we're gradually tapering the thickness of the wings down. All right, and another shortcut for going back to the same tool is to press G, and you can see it goes into the extrude tool again. Then press R again, and we're gonna extend that out one more time. And then let's scale it down just a bit more thin. And you can see we've got probably a good enough spread on the wings. It's a cartoon bird, so we're not going to go for a whole lot of realism and accuracy in that sense. And now we're going to sculpt the wings a little bit just to kind of get closer to the general shape for now. So let's go into the top view so we get the most accurate view of what we're doing. And press 4 and we'll go into the wireframe mode. And I like to do most of my sculpting, if I'm doing it by hand, in the vertex mode. So right click on the object, go to vertex. Now press W because we're going to be moving these, sweeping the wings back. So you select them all the way to just outside of the body or fuselage. Hold down Shift and then select all these. Make sure that you only select them in the wings, not in the body. And then again, move, since you've got your move tool, we're going to move them back in this direction just a little bit. Okay, now we're going to deselect this first row on both sides. So hold down the Control key and drag a deselection box around those, and we're going to move it back a little further, and then hold down the Control key and draw a deselection box around these here, and the correspondingly these here. Move it back a little bit further. What we're trying to do is just give sort of a sense of the wings sweeping back. So continue each row back a little further. Deselect, deselect, back a little further, deselect, deselect, back a little further, deselect, deselect, one more, and that's pretty good for the general sweeping back look. Deselect the corners here, the back corner, and let's move these back a little bit to kind of give a little more contour. And let's do these also so that they correspond. Shift, select box, and then move these back to kind of match a little better. And so that's pretty good for now. Click off of it. Let's go back into the perspective mode. Okay, well that'll work for now. We'll do some more tweaking as we go along. So the next thing we want to do is start sculpting the head and the neck. And again, we can use the front and side views. That works pretty well. So space bar, and let's go into the side view first. And let's bring this in closer. So this is going to be the neck, head, and beak. So we need to start sculpting this. And what I like to do is go into, again, the wireframe mode. And we're going to scale this down for the neck, and then leave this a little bit bigger, and then extend this out for the beak and shape it. So first, let's grab a selection box around this part and scale it down for the neck. Press R, and we can click on the center one, and so it tapers down in all directions. Let's get a selection box around this entire front end, and we can taper that down in all directions to start forming the front of the face and the beak. At this point, now let's deselect this row here, Control, and deselect, and let's use the move tool to move this out a little bit, and then deselect the next row and move it out a little further. And let's take it down a little bit like that, give sort of a curve down, and then deselect this second to the last one, and let's extend that out and curve it down a little bit. And now I want to scale this down all the way to a point. In this tutorial, we're not going to have the mouth open because it's not going to be talking or chirping. We're primarily concerned with basic animation. So press the R key for scale, and let's scale this down to a sharp point, right where they all converge evenly. You can kind of eyeball it. And then let's bring this down to finish off the downward curve. And there we have basic bird shape. Let's go back into the perspective mode and take a look at it. Not bad for now. Okay. And actually, I want to bring the neck up a little bit. So just select the neck area and let's bring that up so that's not so symmetrical from top to bottom. And again, make sure you save on a regular basis. Actually, it looks a lot like a penguin, doesn't it? Flying under the water. Okay, now we're going to shape the tail. And we can do that in the perspective panel. Wireframe, that's 4. And so rotate it so that the hoops line up pretty well. Now we need to start tapering this down to the shape of the tail feathers. So we can start with the first one and do a selection box all the way back here. Let's rotate it around so we can see it from the side, and let's just in the Y direction start tapering it. Okay, and let's move it up a little bit. Let's deselect the first set of vertices and R. Let's scale, continue scaling down a little bit more there. W, let's move it up, and let's deselect the next row and scale it down a little more. We're getting close to the tail, and let's move it up a little bit and deselect the next row and scale it down. Now we're getting really close to the tail itself, so it should be getting very small. And move it up. Alright, and then deselect this hoop here, and we want to really make these go down to the fairly flat like feathers. And let's rotate this around, see, yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so rotate it around this way now, because we want to first of all taper these out. So just drag a selection box around this and then bring that in that way, and then the rest of them we want to start flaring out. So that looks pretty good. I want to bring this in a little bit too. Now these, from here on, we want to fan out like tail feathers, so we'll drag a selection box around those and start fanning that out, and then just draw another selection box around these, or you can do a deselect if you want on these. It's up to you. Then take that out like that and deselect those. Take that out further, and I want to also move these out a little bit, and then deselect those and move those out a little bit, and then fan those out all the way. So let's take a look at that. It looks pretty good. I think we could go a little bigger with the tail. Let's fan it out a little bit more there. Take it out a little bit further and go into the shaded mode 5 and take a look at it. Not too bad. And let's go back into the object mode and take a look at it. Now you can do a preview of how it will look when it's smoothed out. We still got a lot of tweaking to do to make it look better. But what you can do is select the object, press Q to just have the select tool, and you can press the 3 key, and you can see it looks like it's been smoothed. It's sort of a preview of what it would look like if you added smoothing to it, which what it does is adds a lot of subdivisions to make it smoother. So that's not too bad. I think I would make these wings go back a little bit further, and to get out of that preview mode, then you select it, press 1, and then that reverts back to what it really looks like. Okay, so let's just do a little more tweaking on those wings before we go further. And to do that, I want to use the Paint Select tool. So right click on it, go to Vertex, and let's go over here to the paint select tool, and you can see that as you mouse over it, it conforms to the direction, but it's too big, so we need to make it smaller. So in order to make this tool smaller, you hold down the B key on the keyboard, left mouse button, drag it to the left. And then that's about the right size for the selections we want to do. So we're simply going to select all the vertices at the back side of the bird. And also want to get these as well. So press your W. We're going to move them back in the Z direction a little bit. And that's pretty good. Okay, now at this point, I just want to shape the front leading edge of the wings a little bit. So let's click off of the bird and let's just select the corners, shift select, and let's move those back a little bit to give it kind of a sweeping look. And I think that's pretty good for now for a cartoon bird. And let's go back to the object mode, right click and select object mode, click off of it. Let's do our preview smooth, click on it, press 3, and let's take a look at it. That looks better. I like those wings better now. Okay, and then let's come out of that mode, select it, press 1, and we got it. Alright. So before we finish part 1 of this tutorial, let's add some eyes to it. Very, very simple. So select it, and we're just going to move the bird temporarily back. I mean, there are different ways we can do this, but just to get it out of the way so that when we create the spheres for the eyes, the bird's not in the way. Click on the Create Sphere for the eyeballs, and you can see it comes up like that. We want this to be where the pupil goes, so we need to rotate it, and of course we need to scale it down. So let's first of all move it out of the way this way, and press the R key to scale it down. And we want to rotate it, so press the E key and then rotate it this way. And you can see that's about 95 minus 95. We can make that more exact there in the channel box of 90 degrees for now. We may want to adjust it a little bit. And then we'll just, since this is going to be the pupil, let's rotate it a little bit this way so that it's doesn't look quite as awkward. Alright, so let's bring the bird back to its origin. In Translate Z, let's press 0, and there it goes right back. And let's just, by hand, let's move that eyeball into place, just at least roughly. And just by moving around in different directions, we can get it into place. And just let it go right into there, create a socket, and just get kind of a rough general positioning to where a bird's eye view would be. Pun intended. Alright, that's pretty good. So now we need the other eye, of course, but we don't need to create another eye. We can simply duplicate this one and place it on the other side. So let's do that. The shortcut for that is Command D, and there we are. So let's move that over here and try to position it somewhat similar. Let's rotate it so it matches. And just, roughly adjust it, and we can hold down the shift key and select the other one and see if the rotation matches. I think we could probably rotate this one a little bit more, but that's close enough for now. So there we go. Didn't want to leave part one of this without any eyes. And again, let's go ahead and smooth it. We don't have to smooth the eyes because they're already pretty smooth. And let's take a look at what it looks like smoothed. 3 key, click off, and there it is. He's got himself some bug eyes. That's okay, we love him anyway. Alright, so that's the end of part one. And in part two, we're going to add some feet, and then we're going to build a skeleton for the bird.